You're tuned to the IP Communications and VoIP community in our 11th year. To produce these weekly meetings, we really appreciate the support of Simwood.com. Simwood can turn you as a developer into a telco. Our longtime friends at Greenfield Tech can make your tech dreams feasible and affordable. Go to greenfield.tech. For 8 years, we've been using the finest conference server around zipdx.com. The VUC website is on bluehost.com. Our local rate dial-ins from around the world are from voxbone.com. And we're live with VUC654. Can you believe it? 654 times we've done this? I would have sworn it was 650 or so. But anyway, July 14th, it's Bastille Day here in France, by the way, and I haven't heard any fireworks yet, but I think that's going to happen soon. We're going to be talking to Jeremy Kauffman, who's a co-founder and CEO of LBRY, something that I'm very interested in. But before that, let's introduce the panel. I feel like it's What's My Line? Mr. Andy Smith, who's talking to a young man, unidentifiable. Hey, all right. See, we're all human beings here. Thank you, Andy, for that image. Mr. Corrado Mella. Yes. How do you pronounce that?
Mella. Corrado is fine.
Corrado.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody.
And Mr. James Bowdy.
Good afternoon, everybody, from sunny England.
And of course, our pillar of video production, Mr. Michael Graves.
Hello.
And our guest today is Jeremy Kauffman. Jeremy, welcome to the VUC for the first time.
Thank you so much for having me, Randy and crew.
It's great to have you. And just a quick word on where you can go and look at this while we're talking. It's LBRY.io. We pronounce it library. At least I hope that's right. I think that's what you're supposed to say. And as far as what it is, Jeremy's going to explain that to us in just a second. But before that, Jeremy, we have a little bit of a custom here where we ask people, how did you get where you are? And by that, I mean, what interested you, first of all, in technology at all? And then we can get into kind of what else you've done, because you have a pretty rich career.
Yeah, that's the kind of question that could lead to. I could probably talk about that for like the entire show.
That's fine.
So we'll try to keep it succinct. So I'm in my early 30s. I was fortunate to have a family that was a little bit geeky. Like, even though my father wasn't in a technical career, we had a 286 at the house. So I was first using a computer when I was years old. And it was definitely a bit of a child of the internet. You know, a lot of my education, even in my high school years, I felt like was happening on my own on the internet rather than, in the classroom. And so really, I've been, someone who's been using a computer since a very young age, and really loved them for as long as I could remember. I went to university at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where I got degrees in physics and computer science. I did start a computer science PhD, but it was actually in that program when I kind of realized that I'd been doing entrepreneurial things my whole life. Did I really want to be drilling into one specific subject, or did I want to be doing sort of more dynamic things? So I ended up dropping out of that PhD program. I started a software service company that serves sport and activity organizations. That company was called Top Score. Our largest clients were some Olympic governing bodies like USA Water Polo, USA Rugby. That company is still going and growing. But I got struck for this idea for LBRY about, 2.5-3 years ago at this point. Couldn't shake it, and ended up leaving that company about a year ago to work full-time on LBRY.
Okay, now we need to know what LBRY is. And as much as I think I know what it is and what it's trying to do, and we know it's based on blockchain technology, which is I guess you could say, the new darling of technologies for the moment, or the flavor of the month, or whatever. Following WebRTC and IoT, it's much discussed technology, a little bit lower level, a little bit more, what can we say? It's harder to understand, let's put it that way. And people do not necessarily need to know that part of it, but maybe what are the benefits of it with regard to what you're trying to do, first of all? What does that bring that other sharing platforms?
That's a great question. Definitely blockchain is a big topic right now. It is difficult to understand, and consequentially you get, in my opinion, you get a lot of uses of blockchain that are inappropriate. If I was being charitable, I'd say it's because they don't know better. If I was not being charitable, I'd say it's because they're interested in taking advantage of people. Here's the significance of blockchain. What blockchain does is it allows a set of data to exist without any one party being in control over that data. That's the innovation. It allows for a consensus on a state of affairs. That is, how much money it could be. That could be something like how much money is in an account. It could also be things like, DNS entries or the equivalent. So you can think of, I actually think it's very proper when you hear the word blockchain, just think of blockchain as a new type of database. And it's actually a new type of database with a lot of downsides in terms of how expensive it is, how slow it is to replicate compared to traditional database technologies. But it has this huge, huge upside, this thing that was never before possible, which was the ability to have a database that no one party is in control of. And so how that applies to LBRY, I actually, there's two ways I explain. You always have to have it in one sentence. That's something that startups, how can you explain your business in one sentence? Which is tough in the case of LBRY. So I've got two sentences, one hard one and one easy one. The hard one, although for your audience, this probably won't even be a hard one, but LBRY is a decentralized open source protocol that provides digital content discovery, distribution, and purchase. This is in the blockchain industry sometimes called a fat protocol. The idea is if HTTP is a thin protocol, this is a fat protocol. It does more at the protocol level. So that's the more technical explanation. If that didn't make sense, like that's not what when my mom asks me what I do, I don't tell her all of that. When I say that LBRY is, it's like YouTube, but there's no Google. There's no company that's actually in charge of the way that the service works. We develop it, but if we wanted to change the rules, if we wanted to change, the monetization rules the way that YouTube does, we have to get permission from our users because it's an open source protocol that they're running. It's not something that we can just push a button and switch. So it's kind of like you can have YouTube without a Google.
I have a question. I'm going to abuse my power to be able to ask a question without waiting for anybody else. But Jeremy, there's a lot of looking on Slack, which is where the community is, I guess, mainly. People are talking about rewards, and there's a constant stream of which by the way is kind of regrettable because I know that's not actually the major focus of you folks, and it's not mine. But there's this has been launched as, hey, you're going to get these rewards. Can you explain that whole thing, where it started and where it is now? Because there's some kind of system of, it's not gamification, but the reward thing is kind of pulling things sideways, I would say.
Yeah, and so we've been very careful with that because we want to make sure. So the purpose of the rewards program is actually, it's about getting these tokens into the hands of users, of everyday people, right? Now, when you have a crypto token, if you have those tokens come into being via a mining system, the value of those tokens is primarily going to waste. It's primarily going to the energy and the equipment used to perform the mining. So we created some credits up front with the explicit purpose of giving those credits out to people. It's just how do we get these into the hands of users? Now, when something has value, you're going to get people who are interested in it for the value and not because they want to use it. And so we've been constantly evolving the mechanisms that we have in place. And actually we'll have a new one coming out very soon to prevent the people who aren't interested in the service from getting those. So we do get some people in our Slack channel who kind of come in and beg a little bit, and we usually kick them out. But there's also thousands of people in the channel who are really into the technology, some really smart people, some really creative people. We're all hanging out in the channel, and we're all working on LBRY every day.
Okay, I'm gonna voice it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, well, I guess I got plugged because LBRY it's all open source, an incredible amount of public contributions, and a lot of our team members, they started making public contributions, and then they joined the team. So.
There's a couple other questions to voice real quick that I'm seeing both on Slack and on our IRC channel. So the first question is, how does this compare to BitTorrent or Napster, which are two totally different things, actually, besides being decentralized? And it's true that, by the way, we and all of the people who follow the VUC, follow this conference, are very interested in federation. I might mention it's hidden by my microphone, but Matrix is a federation thing, and we're very interested in all of that. So besides being decentralized, he says, or have I missed the point? So the question was, how does this compare to BitTorrent? Actually, how does it compare to BitTorrent is a good question, because it doesn't really, but I'll let you answer that.
That's a great question. I mean, so there are aspects of it that are BitTorrent-like. We are talking about a decentralized network that accesses data. And in fact, BitTorrent is a technology that I've been aware of for a very long time, followed. It's a brilliant technology. Certainly aspects of LBRY that were inspired by BitTorrent. One way of thinking about it, if you're very familiar with BitTorrent, you could actually think of LBRY as kind of fixing BitTorrent, because BitTorrent is remarkable technology, but there's a couple of problems with it. One is discovery, right? So there's no mechanism for all of the content that's on BitTorrent to be listable, to be discoverable. So there's no the LBRY blockchain is a central database that can be accessed by anyone that says all of the content that's on the network. There's no analog of that for BitTorrent. BitTorrent has no ability to monetize, which ties into the third problem with BitTorrent, which is that it's basically, I don't want to say nothing but infringing content, but realistically, statistically, BitTorrent is 98%. If you look at BitTorrent traffic, it's like 98% infringing content. It's a very high percentage of infringing content. And that is not what we want LBRY to become. And we have put some thought into how we can keep the network primarily being used for legitimate content. And part of the reason I think BitTorrent is there's no ability to monetize. So there's not an ability for someone to, it's not as easy to sell your movie protocol as it is on top of the LBRY protocol.
Yeah, I'm going to voice the next question, and I'm going to let other people get in here, because I could go on forever, and I have my own questions, and I'm saving those for later. John R., on your Slack channel, which I actually probably should say it's lbry.slack.com.
Actually, just to join our Slack channel, go to slack.lbry.io.
Okay. Yeah,
you have to get like an invite first. Yeah.
And you already have so many people. You're out of space for images, by the way, because I tried to upload one earlier today.
You have to clear out the images.
Yeah, you got to
every couple of days.
You got to do the housekeeping. Anyway, John R. asks.
Well,
no, go ahead. I'll go ahead and read the question, which is when. So there looks like 3 questions here. You can take whichever ones you like. Here's the first one. When our beta.
Why don't we just do one at a time?
Okay. Well, because he's got 3 questions. So. Somebody's got to switch, got to decide which ones to answer. The first one is, when are beta and mainnet ETA estimated time of arrival? Give or take 2 months, I guess. That's interesting.
Oh, okay. So mainnet is here. When we go to an open beta, the network isn't changing. The network isn't being rebooted. This is the live network. And honestly, anyone on this show can probably get into the beta right now, right? If you want to really just run LBRY, go to our GitHub page. The releases are linked. The primary reason that it's not more of an open beta is product is not ready for the mainstream. We'd rather keep it to the kinds of people who understand what we're doing and what we're building, because they're way more helpful in terms of helping us build it. I mean, for a long time, something like LBRY didn't work for like 90% of people. We still see significant failure rates. And so it's just not in the level where it's ready for the mainstream. We're trying to get there as soon as possible. And you'll see we put a new release out of the application like every week, every 2 weeks, and we're constantly getting closer. Our roadmap at our website /roadmap, lbry.io/roadmap, has more details on what we're trying to get finished before it comes out. But it is absolutely around the corner.
Okay, second question is, when will LBRY begin to integrate shareable links into all social media platforms so that LBRY growth can be driven by Joe Public?
Cool.
I know.
So one difficulty here is, right now and in the foreseeable future, you'll have to download an application to access the LBRY network, at least access the full network. So there's not. Right, I can't exactly share a piece of LBRY content in the application on social media. Something that we are, that this actually started as a community project and is now, this is a great example of a community project. This guy's now working full-time for the company. We have a website that's called Speech, .ch. So just put a period before the ch in the word speech. And this is like a kind of image sharing, streamable like website that's free to use. Anyone can upload a piece of content and then can share it with other people. So this is the kind of thing that can be used in a social media context and helps spread the library network. And Speech is way better in terms of the fundamental characteristics of it than any of these other alternative sites. Because when you publish something to Speech, it's being published through a decentralized network. Anyone else can make a fork of the website. You know, like a lot of times you see these image sharing sites. Imager starts out great, and then 2 years later, there's ads everywhere, and it's not nearly as nice of a site as it used to be. And so the idea of doing this in an open source way where anyone can, I think is a pretty powerful idea.
Again, the last question in that series is ironic, kind of. It's what plans are here for LBRY to do an IPO, and can I get the COO job that you'll need in order to do the listing prep work? And then I'm going to ask somebody else to ask these questions. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, I don't think an IPO is happening anytime soon. So if you want to work, if you are interested in joining the company, look, I always want to meet talented people. So you can contact me, you can email me, tell me about yourself, tell me what you do. If you know, generally the way that we end up working with people is we try to find some way of doing some kind of small project or starting somewhere. And those can be paid projects, but you know, we always want to meet talented people who think they can help us grow this protocol, grow this platform, and bring it to the mainstream.
That's an excellent answer, and I think that we are one of those people, we being all of the folks on the VUC.
We are one.
Yes, we are one. All right, who has a question here? Corrado had a question, I believe.
Yes, it's probably a bit more complicated than what is the surface of LBRY itself. When you publish something, you claim a name for it. What are the protocols and procedures in place to avoid cyber squatting of those type of domains?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when you publish a piece of content to the LBRY network, I guess I'll just talk about that do you want me to talk specifically about naming or what? Okay, so specifically about naming. So when you publish a piece of content to the LBRY network, you're getting a URL assigned to that content. In the LBRY network, those URLs are written like LBRY : //. So you can have, for example, LBRY : / it's a disaster maps to a Hollywood film with David Cross and Julia Stiles that's been released on the LBRY network by Oscilloscope Pictures Laboratories. The way that works is there's a blockchain entry that points from it's a disaster to a hash that is able to find the content in the network. Now, the way that we prevent squatting is actually in terms of these short names, which we call vanity names sometimes, these are not permanently owned. So in that it's a disaster example, the permanent URL that they own is like it's a disaster and then a hash. So it's a disaster hash B569, etc. It's a little longer than that. But the one it's a disaster that's returned if I put that in without a hash, that is not a strongly owned URL. So permanent URLs contain a hash. URLs that are just text are not permanently owned. It's basically a community process that allows that to point at sort of the best of the competing entries for it's a disaster.
Okay. That is interesting. So there are many different sources for the same domain name that can be found in the network, and you as a user choose which the one you think is the most reputable.
Yeah, so the URL specifically, LBRY : / it's a disaster, will always return one resource. So it's always going to return one thing. However, it is possible to look up what are the losing ones, what are the ones that are not being returned. And it's also possible to directly access the losing ones, include hash and / it's a disaster. It would be LBRY : / it's a disaster, hashtag A9B6, you know.
Yeah, and nobody stops you from using a URL shortener to get something. Exactly. So this is sort of our solution to the squatting problem.
basically don't allow strong ownership of simple words, allow strong ownership of a URL, but allow the community to evolve what the simple words point to. I think, if you look at something like Namecoin, which did allow strong ownership, they had 200,000 domains purchased after a couple of months, and there were 40 or 50 that were active. Right now, LBRY has over 50,000 domains claimed, and they all return something.
Okay.
So I think that we're already seeing that this is a better design.
What stops majors, publishing majors like MGM or anyone else, from
Sony
grabbing something?
Sony.
Exactly. Grabbing good domain names in the LBRY domain system.
Well, I'm not sure. Something, and we'll see how this continues to play out. I'm not sure how important it could not be important owning or controlling rather these short names, because if you think about it, right, like I don't know my YouTube URLs aren't that important. Netflix URLs aren't that important. You're still going to be searching the network. You can still discover content that's at weird URLs just because they're not at Yeah. So I don't think that it affects the discovery process that much. I think it becomes more of like a vanity thing or a signaling thing. I don't think like the design absolutely is, it's not the kind of design where people with, just because they have more money, are going to be able to squeeze out the little guy. The little guy will have no problems being able to get a URL and having that content be discovered.
In some of the documentation I've seen on the website, I saw reference, and it's off the top of my head, and apologize if I'm quoting incorrectly, about a bidding process for some domain names. Is that correct?
I don't know what the best real world analogy is, because there's never anything being destroyed and there's never anything being lost. Basically, that the community has, the publishers have, and so on. They're basically like votes. So you've got all of these competing entries for something that's going to be really competitive. I don't know, the word cool, right? What's cool going to return? You can have all these competing entries. And then basically the people who have these credits can vote on which one in a non-destructive way. Nothing is lost when you're voting, but each credit is essentially up to one vote. Vote that cool, if I enter just cool, it should return cool 19A6 instead of cool 2B45. So that's the way that it works. And so, yes, there's no ownership over plain words. No one party ever just owns that. I think that's for the best if we're trying, and it also matches the way that culture kind of works and evolves in a real world sense. The way that a word is used is not owned by a party. The community is able to decide what we mean when we use certain things. So we think this system is more likely to converge on sort of what people would expect to be on the other side of a word.
Okay.
You know what? I think it's time for a demo. And Corrado, you've done your normal stuff of leaping into the nitty gritty before we've even seen the basic operations. So Jeremy, it's a disaster. Are you prepared?
Yes. Am I doing my screen? Absolutely, I'm prepared. Yeah. So I like to. I actually will frequently say that it's kind of the world's most boring demo, right? So this is the LBRY app. I already had it opened here, but we're not trying to innovate at the level of this. We want this to be something that feels very familiar to people. They understand how to use it. So all right, let's say I just want to watch a movie here. All right, I have a page for it. I'm gonna click play, and I'm gonna watch it.
So you're just streaming that. You also have the option to download the binary, I guess.
Yeah, and so that was a very familiar experience. What was really cool about that, and what is new about this, is that all this interface, all of that process, fetching the video, all the end, and if I were to one layer. Then if I'm paying for one, that would also happen in an entirely decentralized way. So what's cool about this, and it's going to ask me to pay for this, I believe. Or maybe I bought this before. I must have bought this before.
Okay, yeah, I'm particularly interested in seeing how the cryptocurrency angle works into this.
But before we get to that, James, Jeremy, maybe you could go look at Randulo, Randulo, and consume some of the copious amount of content.
You just want to get your credits.
Yes,
you just want the creds, don't you?
I want the creds. No, I don't need the creds.
Did I spell that right?
You could just show the process, though. Because this is how it works, but I don't see any discovery, but I do see that if you knew my name.
Yeah, discovery. So we have, you can search.
There's a whole load of stuff there.
Okay, so let's see. All right. Let's buy.
1.8 credits. Is that a lot?
All right. I'm ready for it. Give me those credits.
Okay, now this is where okay, all right, customer looks like it's working.
You can stop it, though. We're just showing the mechanism. By the way, I wanted to mention that there are several, Jeremy, you can maybe go through this. There are couple of ways that you can so-called monetize it. One is credits, but one is apparently in currency. And
what, real currency?
So you can price your content. You can, no matter what, at least in the current form, payments are happening via the credits. You can choose to price your content in dollars and have that, and have that be pegged to the current exchange rate.
Okay, and I did that. I did every possible thing because I'm just playing around. And so you see free, for example, the Coming Storm, which actually had, we're gone. But the most important thing to say is that I put stuff up that was free. There we go. Coming Storm, you can see has a kind of a palm trees with a sun. That's free. Then there's other things that are free. Then there are things at 1.8. I can't even remember what I did, but this was all just in the name of experimentation.
Yeah, yeah, and look, it's definitely a beta, right? We want to give you a much better way to represent your content. We want to improve discovery, and we want to do so many other things. But what we've really got here, in terms of a proof of concept, in terms of showing that all of this is possible, it's all possible, and we think that's really, really cool because none of this was possible prior to a couple of years ago. And as far as we know, no one else has even properly built this as an end-to-end system, really, other than us. So we're really excited to be at the forefront of this.
No, it's really interesting stuff. So, James, what do you want to see demonstrated? That's what I want to know.
Well, I want to understand how the cryptocurrency bit works, where your wallet is, and I want to understand how the person who puts up a binary, how they get the audit trail and essentially get paid.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So let's start with the first half, which was how does the wallet work and where are the credits? So it's a fairly, should I keep screen share on for this?
Yeah.
Whatever you like.
Whatever works.
I mean, I don't know that this interface is that helpful in terms of understanding how it works, but it's a fairly traditional proof of work blockchain. So you have a wallet file on your hard drive that's keeping these credits secure. That wallet file is basically the equivalent of cash. We don't have your credits. Your credits are well, the credits aren't in the file, but the keys in the file are the only way that you can access or move the credits. The balance in the credits is kept, of course, on the blockchain ledger. But so the answer is that this is very cash-like. LBRY doesn't control these credits. These credits are, while technically speaking, they're not actually on your machine. It's analogous to them being on your machine. Now, in terms of the audit trail and information about some of those things, that's actually still an area of active work for us. Like if Randy were to pull up his transaction history, he would probably see that he received a payment for the content that I purchased. But he would not receive really much more details about that. I don't even actually think it's giving a strong enough indicator of where that came from. So there's more work to do there. And this is in terms of giving publishers better feedback and insight into who and where that money is coming from. But basically, you have this, you do have a log of payments coming in. Is all we've got currently.
Great. Now, at the moment, my client is saying I have 0 credits. So you mentioned in your preamble that you're offering some form of reward incentive scheme. How does that work?
That's right. So right now, it's only the people who are who we let into the program, because we're trying to make sure the credits end up in, you know, real people's hands and real users. So I'm happy to give you an invite code. So I could give you an invite code. I can also just send you some, right? So if you were to send me an address, I could, you know, put that address in here, and I would just be able to send you some credits. But the rewards program is basically if we've let you in, and if you sign up on the website, that's how you get in the queue to be let in. You will have to go through an additional verification step. But if you're let in, right now we're giving out the market value it's I think you can earn $15 or so in rewards based off the market value of those credits.
Okay, so that's just getting currency into the marketplace to get transactions flowing.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, I managed to install everything in about 12 minutes. As we're warming up for the show. So I'm just amazed that it's all up and working, and I can stream. I streamed It's a Disaster because that was a freebie. So.
Yes, after like, seriously, it's like 9 months of our, or longer. I mean, because really the coding has been going on for about 2 years, but we got funded in September of last year. And it's basically a solid 7 months of I'd be on with our you know, our investor every week or two. Like, why doesn't it work? So it's like, it's after 9 months of like being nervous every time I open it up, like, it's gonna work. I'm like finally emotionally like, okay, I have fairly high confidence that when I open it, it's gonna work. But it's been very tough. Well, you know, this is really some cutting edge, pretty tricky technology to get working, and we're really thrilled that it's working at the level that it is.
Well, I have to say, Jeremy, everything just worked for me. Corrado and Andy experienced the old undocumented feature, but and that's quite unusual because with my configuration here, normally I break anything I touch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we keep our stats. It not working is also not shocking, but we're constantly trying to get that number lower.
Yeah,
it's worth probably repeating. I think somebody just said this, that we should do this too, and it's a good idea that the Slack channel on LBRY is one place you can ask. The general channel is one place you can ask questions before we're done here. And the other one is IRC on the VUC channel of freenode.net. Our regulars all know that. Other than that, I've turned Twitter off because I'm sick of looking at it. But so we're not watching that. That's all I can tell you. Who else has a question?
Andy, come on. You have a question.
I'm gonna temporarily turn off the screen share.
Okay. Yeah, well, it'd be good to get, we can come back to you and your camera. There we go.
Yeah, you have an active community at the moment. This is obviously growing very quickly. Have you any idea what sort of size the community is and the rate of growth?
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's in Slack, there's it's about 7,000 to 8,000 people. Now, how many of those are actually online and active at any given time is just maybe a couple hundred. We have a very large mailing list. It's at over 250,000 people right now on our email list. We have any given week, you know, right now we'll have, this week, you know, we'll probably have 5,000 to 10,000 people running the application as part of the beta testing. And in terms of contributors, we're at over 50 people. Maybe we're even pushing 100 people who have made some kind of contribution to the code base. And right now, there's probably a dozen people who are at least making a contribution a week.
That's pretty impressive, actually. So, and how long have you been going to build that?
So this was technically speaking, work on the project is probably at like 30 months or something, but no one was working on it full time until last September.
That's a very impressive achievement. I'm seriously quite gobsmacked, actually.
No, and further, I mean, there are other things going on in this area. So one of the impressive things is if you take a look at LBRY and see what they're doing, it is impressive, and also the people behind it. In fact, Jeremy, you might want to mention a few of the other people behind it. Everybody's background,
very good idea. Yeah,
everybody's background is quite impressive. So why don't you go through that a little bit?
So yeah, because they do all of the work, right? I just get to go and do the interviews. Now, you know, so I'm technical by education, and I certainly understand how all what we're doing works. I've done very little coding for the project, and even the coding that I have done has been more surface level, at the application and website and design and things like that. So yeah, there are 7 full-time people working for the company. Most of them are on the technical side. The CTO and I have been colleagues and friends for a very long time. We started our previous company together. Absolutely brilliant guy. Our blockchain lead has been working on blockchain technology for, I think, over 5 years now. He was a contributor to Litecoin and Dogecoin and some other coins in the past. Another very sharp guy, master's degree from CMU. Our protocol lead is actually, I like, since we are a cryptocurrency startup, I feel like you have to have the requisite college dropout anarchist hacker. So that's Jack. He's another guy. So many of the people at this company are just they're very smart people. Jack has not had as much of a traditional education path, but he's a really sharp guy, really hardworking guy. Our operations lead has been involved in so many different coins and companies like that. He has an incredible knowledge of the blockchain space. Our content lead has been a producer on films that have been at Sundance and other film festivals. Has a good amount of connections in Hollywood and in the content space, and he's really been responsible for bringing on a lot of the great content that we have. In addition to a Hollywood studio, we have, I think we're at 10 YouTubers with 1 million subscribers or more. The amount of videos committed to so one of the things we've been doing is recruiting YouTubers and saying, make your content available on LBRY. Right now we've got over 150,000 videos committed, totaling over 5 billion views. And the channels that we have committed, I believe, are now totaling over 10 million subscribers, or maybe it's 20 million subscribers. It's definitely over 10 million.
By the way, the question was asked why we're not streaming this on LBRY, and the answer is that you can't stream this kind of thing yet. But yes. I would submit that there's a YouTube URL, and it will, it would be a good idea to feature it, if I may modestly suggest.
and we can actually, the video, once it's finished, can be uploaded to LBRY. It can then be hosted on the web via our speech site. And actually, LBRY has been designed with streaming in mind. That is, and this is another difference versus BitTorrent, where BitTorrent is not designed with streaming in mind. So LBRY supports streaming in terms of how it fetches the data and in terms of how the decryption works. All that stuff was designed with streaming in mind. But when it takes you this long to get non-live streaming working, you just, all right, we'll touch that later. But it has been designed with it in mind. So it's supposed to accommodate it, and it may be something we'll get to in the later half of this year.
Which brings up another question, by the way, which is that when we so-called upload, in fact, you're not uploading when you put video, when you give access to video, because the in other words, the distributed network. Go ahead, explain the distributed network concept.
So the default behavior of the client, this is something we'll turn into an option. I believe it actually is an option at the lower level, but the application doesn't give it to you. So there's an option where basically when you first publish, you can announce that you want the content to be picked up by as many people who are interested as possible. This is just to make it more robust when you initially announce it, rather than waiting for someone to request it. You could have turned your computer off or whatever. So yeah, when you click that publish button, the behavior of the app currently is to do the equivalent of a shout that's like, I just published this, come and grab it now so other people have it. And so yes, right now when you click publish, it will basically be immediately grabbed by other computers on the network. So that's kind of like publishing it and pushing it out. That's what happens right now.
It's important to mention that that's not actually an upload. It's not like uploading it to YouTube.
Yeah.
It is distributed on the network, and that depends on a lot of, let's face it, random factors, really. But that, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying one needs to understand that this is not LBRY's computer or LBRY's network that's up there, getting 1 million minutes a second like YouTube. This is a just completely distributed and federated thing that has no single control point.
That's exactly right.
Right, question from Jay Carpenter and a comment back from Azero Shin. So Jay Carpenter asks, are you running your own blockchain or are you using an existing blockchain?
And Jay is with us, so he can do the
Is he?
rebuttal.
Oh, there you are. Come on,
Hey,
man.
James.
You sneak
So-
in there.
Thank you.
We are running our own blockchain. I will also go ahead and answer the follow-up implicit question there, which is why frequently. My opinion on this is that, right, so blockchains right now, and for the foreseeable future, essentially have properties, right? Blockchain operations become more expensive the more demand and the more successful that blockchain is. And already we see scaling issues in blockchain, even at the level of demand of Bitcoin. And if you look at ones like Ethereum, right, Ethereum right now is promising, I don't know, there's probably 50 different decentralized applications being built on top of Ethereum, all of which are supposed to be multi-billion-dollar companies. And the Ethereum blockchain can't handle the bandwidth to do the initial sale of the tokens for one of them. So now, I'm not trying to knock Ethereum. They're very smart people who've created an amazing product. But that all things will happen on one blockchain is ignorant of the fundamental properties of blockchain. And it's also ignorant of the general ways that databases work. If I am building an application, I most likely want to tailor the design of that database specific to that application. And I'm going to be able to get better performance if it's just for the application of decentralized YouTube, do I want that database to be sharing all of these other data sources for all these other things? So I think the most likely outcome, assuming the scaling problems apply to LBRY too. Now that we think that we have some solutions for those, or solutions for those exist, but basically, regardless, I think the most likely outcome is you're going to see decentralized applications having separate blockchains. If I were going to start a decentralized application company today, I would probably fork Ethereum rather than doing it on top of Ethereum. I want to be in control of my technology stack. If I need to make a change at the blockchain level because that works better for my specific use case, I don't want to have 100 other use cases muddled in so that the system has to work well for everyone, but therefore it doesn't work perfectly for my use case.
Thanks, Jeremy. That makes sense. And I have some other questions about the nature of your blockchain, but I'll hold off on that. And I'll ask you something else that's a little bit more fundamental, which is, what is the design of your storage mechanism? Are you storing the content on the blockchain? Are you using pointers?
Pointers, yeah. So there's a pointer in the blockchain that is basically the entry point to the piece of content. The content in the typical publishing format is a list of encrypted chunks. So basically, when you're fetching a piece of content, you just know that it consists of these 500 chunks in this sequential order, and you're then going and fetching those individually.
And is that pointer tied to the naming convention that you were describing earlier?
Yeah, so actually, at a fundamental level, the LBRY blockchain can be thought of as just a key value store, where you have both a combination of the name and potentially a hash as the key, and the value at the blockchain level. So the blockchain rules are really liberal. It's basically 8 kilobytes of space, and you could put complete junk in there if you wanted to. And then at the level above the blockchain, the protocol expects certain formats and can interpret certain things. And if it sees junk, it's just going to say, well, I don't know what to do with that. And one of those fields that it can expect inside of that 8 kilobytes is a specific type of pointer to that's sort of the entry point to then doing the decentralized fetching of the content.
Cool. And what is the interval for mining a block? Is it a set interval, or do you it sounds like you've got proof of work going. How frequently are blocks produced?
It's proof of work. It's about 2.5 minutes. We certainly, I'm not in love with proof of work, right? It creates a lot of waste. As I think there's a lot of LBRY that's a green technology in terms of its ability to reduce bandwidth and other costs. Proof of work blockchains are not a green technology. And so I certainly would be interested in ways that we can potentially evolve that to other systems. That's not a high priority for us, but I would love to prevent more of the waste that comes from proof of work blockchains.
I think it's a really cool experiment or project, and I think there's a a big potential for this type of content delivery network, if you will. So
it's gonna happen, right? I'm not arrogant enough to say 100% that we're going to be the ones to do it. I think we're in great shape to be the ones to do it, but I'm in 100% confident that this is happening. It's going to happen in one way or another.
Agreed.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Any of the panel? Mr. Bodie, Mr. Smith.
Yes, Jeremy, can you very quickly, because I missed it because I was doing something. What's the procedure for getting signing up as a beta tester and getting a tiny amount of credit?
So right now, you can only just enter your email on the website and get on the list. You will get off very soon because we're about to end that list entirely. So I do recommend if you're listening to this, put your email on the website. You'll get off very quickly. However, right now, all I can say is, if Randy or you just sends me an email directly, I'll put you to the top. But there's not a public way to just get get off.
I must say I didn't wait that long because I started very early. And one of the things you do, there's a shareable link. Did we talk about this already? I don't know. Maybe is this mechanism still happening where you have your link that you can share, and if you bring enough people in, okay. So that was one thing, and because I have a bunch of things like a TV collection with 380,000 people. I managed to bring in at least 11 or 12. So that went quickly, but tweeting your private link is one way. And if that's still happening, fine. And I think that was maybe one of the major ways that I knew about to make it happen. And I don't recall the wait because I saw this very early. I'm trying to remember now if it wasn't through the fellow who does a podcast about all of this stuff, BitTorrenting and stuff, whose name Jeremy King.
Torrent freak, Jeremy King.
Yeah. So I think this came through that. You probably did an interview with him, right? Somebody from LBRY. I saw a show. Yeah, I heard. No,
I was on Torrent Freak. Yeah, with Jamie.
Right. I heard a show, Jamie, and then I probably signed up as I do for everything. Then I get like 2 years later, I get emails from people I've never heard of. But in this case, it only took a few months or a few weeks. And so that's the way it happened. Let's remind everybody the principal URL to go to learn more about all this stuff would be lbry.io. And from there, take a look at the team. I was really impressed by that. I thought this was like 5 hippies programmers who, were living in a tent someplace in the mountains. And it turns out people like Jeremy are folks who have actually directed startups and had a certain amount of success. So it isn't quite what I thought it was. And it's not quite as guerrilla effort as I expected. So anyway, go take a look at it, decide for yourself. And I definitely recommend for people who are creators, this is, getting in on the ground floor of anything is always good. So do that and see what happens. And we have big hopes for this. Who else has questions or comments?
Randy, so this is Jay again. I have one question for Jeremy. Jeremy, if you had a magic wand, what would be the top 3 wishes you would want for the community, for the project, and so forth?
I only get 3, huh? And I assume I can't wish for more. I can't wish for more wishes. There's no loophole. So.
No, you can do the loophole. Go ahead.
No, I'm not. All right. Well, then I obviously do the loophole thing. No, so I mean, let's see. I'm going to come up with like realistic wishes, right? Like I'm not going to be like, well, I wish that 3 billion people were using it tomorrow. So I would wish that, that we can. The most important thing is really that we continue to find the right people. If you look at both whether those are contributors and employees, whether those are early users, whether those are the content creators. So I guess maybe I'll just wish for the right people in all 3 of those categories, because if you look at how new technologies go from starting to really changing things, it's very, very frequently some new thing that some smallish community gets and really loves and really cares about. Right? It's the best technologies. It wasn't like They went to the mainstream in 6 months, and the average person was using them. A lot of times the things that didn't make sense to everyone at first and targeted communities of people who got it were the ones who brought it there. And I think that's absolutely what we need. So those can be users, those can be creators, those can be programmers, those can be just creative people, anything. But the people who get this idea, the idea that we can distribute, monetize, share content with one another without any one company being in control of that entire process, it's a super powerful idea. And I just want to keep building on it.
Cool.
I just learned that Josh has been on the YouTube channel, the YouTube chat all this time, handling a bunch of questions. Frankly, I thought that we had that turned off because we use our own various methods, including IRC, and we actually stretched it today to be on Slack. We're coming up close to the usual mark. I mean, we could talk for 5 hours on this stuff, but I would like to make sure that anyone who has questions has had those questions answered. So James is answering something, and then okay, don't know. So you need to. By the way, no one has called into ZipDX. Is ZipDX even running? I guess it is, Michael, isn't it? We have could take hundreds of phone callers from all over the world. We have local rate dial-ins, Jeremy. So I tried to make that clear on Slack because I would have thought that there were international people who maybe were not able to get on various things, and apparently that.
We know what, Randy? It's a measure of the success of the video streaming because people just prefer to watch the video. It's much richer, and they can see you making funny faces.
I guess that's part of it, yeah. Anyway, so we probably need to look for an exit strategy for this interview. It's not an interview, actually. Anti-interview.
Interrogation, more like it.
Interrogation, yeah. But he has acquitted himself, I would say.
Oh, yes. Very well.
Okay. And did you get sufficient dangerous demo, James?
Yeah, well, I'm still going because I've got it up and running here, and I'm just finding my way around. And Jeremy, I haven't managed to break anything yet. Oh. This is most unusual.
Have you created any content yet, though, James?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I've streamed the "It's a Disaster, Are You Prepared" movie. That works.
Jeremy, have we mentioned the issue of? I don't think we did get into this. I don't want to limit this to porn, but whatever might be
bad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, did we go through that or not?
Content.
I don't think we have. Right, and I don't.
So it's free speech.
I don't even know that. Yeah. Right. So there's a couple of different. So first of all, it's an absolutely good question. Right? You're talking about things where someone doesn't have control. What are the downsides of that, and what have we done to mitigate them? Mm-hmm. So first of all, and I don't want this is not the entire answer, so we'll get to what we've done. But the first level answer here is that LBRY is a technology, and to some extent, it's a fundamental aspect of technology that you can't control every usage of it, right? Like HTTP is used to deliver content that is awful all of the time. HTTP is not faulted for that. Similarly, there's all kinds of useful technologies like knives that are used for good purposes 99.99% of the time, but there's still, knives get used for wrong things sometimes. That's not do anything about the design of a knife to prevent that. So in the case of LBRY, there is that aspect to it. If I can't design a system that allows me to only remove the bad stuff. If I design a system that allows me or LBRY Inc. to remove stuff, then not only will we'll be able to use that to remove the bad stuff, which is great, but when we want to make LBRY available in China or Iran or all these other countries, then that government is going to say, as a condition of entering this country, you have to censor your content. And this happens. YouTube actively censors content in Turkey, in Iran, in China, and all of these other places. And we want to be able to say, now, that said, there are community mechanisms and there are things that we can do to prevent stuff. So one, search results are still centralized. So search results are being powered by us. We can block stuff in the search results. Our application can block stuff. So that doesn't block it at the network level, but essentially the browser that we choose to release as a company, we would have the ability to block stuff at that level. The other thing is that the community can try to sort of prevent that from dissolving from common names, common words. So it would be a little bit more buried and a little bit more hidden. Another big aspect is that we haven't gone out of our way to make LBRY is not designed to be super anonymous content access. So in the same way that you can get caught using BitTorrent infringing way, you can get caught using this service. So it's not designed to be the super anonymous way to access content. I think that those are the major ones. We have an essay up on our website that talks about some of this. If you go to our essay at /what, there's a header called Combating the Ugly that goes into our answer for this. But I think I touched on most of those off the top of my head, but it's possible I missed one aspect of our mitigation strategy.
And that's great that that's happening. Any plans for or implementation of karma of any kind? Since you mentioned the community, and the community is an interesting aspect that I haven't looked into a lot, because for me, the community that I've seen on Slack is mostly asking, when am I going to get my? So karma, what about karma? Anything there? Any ideas?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of these, it's a question of how we do them, and can we do them in a decentralized way, or do we want to do them in a decentralized way? So a lot of them are straightforward to handle if we just want to tackle them ourselves, right? So if I want to make a button in the app that calls to LBRY Inc. server and records the thumbs up, the thumbs down, and spits that back out, that's pretty easy. But then LBRY Inc. owns that data versus the decentralized network owning that data. So there are decentralized approaches as well. They're just harder to do, and so that's part of why we haven't done them. But absolutely, we want to support all of the things that people expect. The innovation here is the idea that this is an open source protocol that is not in the control of a single company. Otherwise, I think the YouTube experience is generally pretty good. Videos play fast. People can comment on them. People can thumbs up, thumbs down them and get recommendation. Now, there's things I don't like about specific aspects of this, but we're not trying to totally reinvent the wheel in terms of experience. We're trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of technology that powers that experience.
Okay. I guess you can, sorry, Randy, I guess you can create some meta content or meta comments inside the blockchain or the entry, so you can index and then probably even section some of the content that it could be not safe for work, as it's usually said, or questionable, or other things like classifications, 15, 18 years old, and that things that they could be bookmarked inside the single item that is uploaded, whatever it is, video, text, books, anything.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Corrado.
Any further business before we close down?
It's great. I'm into the command line already, generating some credits on myself. I like that.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's. I will mention. I didn't mention that, so I'll mention that, because the LBRY provides an API. The idea is that you don't have to run the graphical application. We provide a daemon. If you're a programmer or a creator and want to do your own stuff, basically LBRY is an API. There's like 50 commands. Things like publish and get a file and send a credit, and so it's basically based off of those commands. And that API it's LBRY.io/API. You can see the API calls that exist. And you can build all kinds of services on top of this API. I'm sure people will build things that I did not anticipate building, would have never thought of building myself, and they'll be great things. That's one of the really cool aspects of open technology. And I guess if we're wrapping up, is this time for me to do another round of plugs about all of our websites and various social places?
Yes,
absolutely. But before you do that, I just want to show, because it's apropos, here is because yes, I wanted to mention the command line. It's a lot of fun. And here's a whole slew of things just based on those are the commands. And then you can do the help and all of that. And that actually will help you understand it. And Corrado, I don't know, by the way, the interface client maybe doesn't work for you, but you should try the daemon and see if you can make that command line.
Yeah. I'm awfully busy, but just fire it off.
Well, you look it, don't you? Correct.
Yeah, he's super busy. All right. Anyway, yes, Jeremy, let's get back to the final thing of
Can I just
what
say,
you're looking for.
Andy, I just managed to generate myself 50 credits, I think.
Can't have 50 credits. I don't even have 50 credits, and I've been working with
50 credits. That's pretty good. Did you really just? How'd you get 50 credits?
No way.
Well, I'm following the guide.
Yeah. All right. Oh, I see. Gotcha. Okay. So Yeah. So, hey, if you like, the number one thing to do, the easy thing to do is just to put your email in. You'll end up getting in early. You'll end up getting some nice rewards for it, and it will take you 3 seconds. So just go to our website /get LBRY.io/get and enter your email address. If you're already sold just listening to this and you want to like get involved now, if you want to get your content up, you can actually, the easiest thing to do is actually to just email me or email Riley, REILLY at LBRY.io. We would love to get your content up as part of the early beta. Maybe even we can feature it and stuff like that. If you're a programmer, go onto our GitHub and or join our Slack. We're giving out credits to people who make contributions. It's an incredible community of really smart people. If you like working on cutting edge technology with smart people, come get involved. And if there's other ways you just like can't wait, or you have other ideas, I'm very accessible. And so reach out to me. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. Anyone who thinks they can contribute or help out in some way, I want to meet them. So I guess that would be it. Oh, and all the social places, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook. We have a subreddit. So you can find out what's going on.
All right. I want to thank everybody for participating, and we're looking forward to LBRY growing immensely. And with that, I just want to say that keep watching the skies. Whatever you do, keep watching the skies.